Hey everybody, this is Scott L. Miller, and here on Sam IT, we're going to follow up our talk on Windows 10 and how it's the last operating system you'll ever get for your desktop from Microsoft, with how does this affect Windows Server 2016. So Windows Server 2016, as most people know, is the server version of Windows 10. This is a little bit confusing because of the new naming conventions around Windows 10. Wow, I'm having problems today. So with Server 2016, this is actually the kernel lock to the initial release of Windows 10. That's kind of the way to look at it. The very first Windows 10 didn't have a listed version number. It was just version 0, I guess. So Server 2016 has been in lockstep with the initial release of Windows 10. Now people are wondering, or it gets asked a lot, because there's no new Windows 10 coming. Of course there is, as we covered in the other video, that's not a thing. Does this mean that Server 2016 is the last version of Windows Server that's ever going to be released as well? No, that is absolutely not the case. First of all, nothing from Windows 10 changing influences how Server is going to be released. These are just releases. And two, Windows 10 is just the new name of the product, and so it has lots of releases on its own, so we would assume that Server 2016 would continue to have updates just like Windows 10 has, with new versions and everything, because nothing has changed in reality in the Windows ecosystem, nothing important. What we do know is that the successor to Server 2016 is already in beta and has been for months. We've been running it for testing on some projects that I do. It's out there, it's ready for people to play with, great new technologies, everyone should be out taking a look at it. And we don't know its name yet, as always with the case of Microsoft products, there's no name until it's public. But we know it's 2016 R2. Right, they have a model for this. They're not going to change it trivially because it affects how their licensing works and their customers get confused, and they don't want to do that. So we're pretty sure it's going to be 2016 R2. It's going to have the same licensing stepping that they've had with 2008 R2, and all of those. For those not aware, the R2s are completely standalone operating systems with no particular connection to the version before or after them. Right? So what I mean by that is, so there was 2012, then 2012 R2, then 2016. 2012 R2 is no more related to 2012 than it is to 2016. It is a full version on its own in between the two. The reason that it gets an R2 designation is because the one before it and itself share CALs for their users or for devices. This is purely a licensing thing. It has nothing to do with the technology, the kernel, or any other components. Any size change happening between versions may happen at any step along the way. They are not upgrades to the one before them. R1s and R2s are completely independent, unique operating system releases. So the next 2016 R2, or whatever it's going to be called, is already out there. You can go play with it. We know that it's coming, and we have no reason to believe that the model that Microsoft has been using, which has been very successful since 2008 first release, will continue. Actually, since 2003 is released, I suppose. If you go back that far, they use the R2 as well, just with a different NT kernel master version and different timelines in between products. So you can safely expect that the server ecosystem is not going to be impacted by the move from the desktop system to rapid releases. And we can see this mirrored, as I talked about in the other video, in the Linux ecosystem, which Microsoft is clearly mirroring. If we look at the Fedora world, where traditionally Fedora was used for desktops and RHEL or CentOS was used for servers, that's what we're seeing Microsoft move to here. So Windows 10 is going to come out probably every 6 to 12 months with a new update, probably about every year, and whereas Fedora does it every 6 months. And then the server release will come out every 4 years, 2 to 4 years typically, which is still a little bit more rapid than something like RHEL, but relatively frequent. Relatively infrequent compared to the desktop. And so it's a standard model. It works really well. People tend to want their servers to be a lot more stable as far as changes, not stability as far as reliability, but as far as applications changing on top of them compared to desktops. We can have a separate conversation about whether that is still viable in the future and if that's a good model for people to follow. I've talked about that in Rethinking Long-Term Support Releases on SMB IT Journal, if you want to check that out, and I will, again, try to remember to put that in the show notes below. But that's where we are with Server 2016, 2016 R2, and what will likely happen in the future. I will give some prediction that in several years we may start to see the server ecosystem move to a more rapid release, where we see a release every year or so. Microsoft has a lot of licensing and other issues to think about in regards to that before they can consider doing anything like that with their baby server operating systems. So it's not a little thing. They're going to have to look into that a lot and do a lot of prep with Windows 10 and other components to get people used to that so that they can make that change. They might be able to do it, and moving to subscription licensing is one of the ways that they can make that happen. So I'm looking forward to Microsoft making that transition because it will very likely aid in other things that we also find important. I tend to be a big believer in the importance of rapid releases even on servers, and that staying up to date is more important than staying stable, but that is certainly a different discussion. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you want to sponsor us, you can do so on Patreon, and if you want to discuss, leave your comments below.